Hi everyone, welcome back to Definitely Casual PCs. In this video, I'm going to start a restoration series on a couple iconic 8-bit computers of the 80s. That is of Commodores. They're not all the same Commodore machines. There's two VIC-20s and a Commodore 64 and a disk drive. So I really can't call it like a VIC-20 repair series or C64. So it's just going to be a Commodore repair series. So with this is I'm going to be getting at least two of these machines fully running and fully functional. I'd love to get all three of them to work perfectly, but you know, law of averages. If I can get at least one of the VIC-20s and the Commodore 64 to work, that'd be great. So let's introduce some machines and see if we get a symptom list going. Because this video is mainly going to be just that, getting symptoms and disassembly. Part 2 is going to be me retrobrighting at least this one and the 64 since they're yellow, but you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So let's see what we're working with. Okay, so we have most of them all on the bench here. I have a tape drive I'm also going to be at least cleaning up and getting working. But we have three 8-bit Commodore machines and a 1541 disk drive. It's a little brown. The camera's not picking it up. I don't know why. Okay, so here's the machines that I'm going to be restoring in this series. Two VIC-20s, 64. There's another cassette drive I have somewhere. I need to find it, but I'll find it here after a bit. And a 1541 disk drive. So these are all various stages of yellowing. This is actually a very, very, very yellow machine, which for some reason the camera's not picking it up. So ideally I want to get all these machines working 100% perfectly. So I will, but I do need to say, I know for a fact this machine, this one works. Because this one actually came from a woman in my local town, my hometown here. And this is still in the box. I have the box for this, not the foam, but the box, all the power adapter and everything for it. I know this one works. I've actually played some VIC-20 games on it. I just mainly am going to get the dust cleared off on this one, because I'm not too keen on retrobrighting this one. Just because of how good a shape it's in. And since I've never retrobrighted before this point, I'm really kind of iffy on retrobrighting something that I know works and doesn't really need it. It's just a slight yellowing. But this is an older model VIC-20. It's got the gold Commodore VIC-20 badge, the gold power badge, focus, the one joystick controller, on-off switch, and the two-prong 9-volt AC power port, which I do have the power supply for this. So since I know this one works, I'm still going to show it working for argument's sake. But it does work. So this one's not going to need much other than me popping the keys off and dusting, you know, all the dirt in the crevices. So this one's not a major priority for me to get working. I know it does work. The other two are what I'm going to be focusing on getting restored. I have no idea if either of these machines work. I got them at two separate times throughout the past year and a half. This one's missing the 3 key. I have the 3 key. The gentleman I got this from, he said it broke off when it fell off a shelf, and he found it about a couple days later after he got this to me. And it definitely did fall off a shelf, because, yeah, I don't see that's broken though, but anyway, this is severely yellowed. In fact, it's almost a brown color on the camera that I'm looking through. It definitely needs the keys clean, definitely needs stuff gone through. Don't know if it works. But this is a later model VIC-20. It shares a very similar design on the label anyway as the VIC-20. And they almost share, the later ones share the exact same case almost. They're the same height, same width, same everything. In fact, you can kind of see on the back, there's that rounded off section. which does correspond to this rounded section for the internal RF modulator on the C64. So this one's fell off a shelf, and it might not work. If this doesn't work, I'm not going to be too heartbroken, because I do have a working functional VIC-20. But this one is definitely going to be torn apart, clean. I'm going to find a way to reattach the 3 key. If this isn't, in fact, dead, which, if it's dead, you know, I'll diagnose as much as I can with it. But if it is dead, then I'm just going to retrobrite this to kind of get some, you know, practice with retrobriting, something that's actually worth a little bit. And I'll find a use for it. If I can get this to work, an idea I had for this was I want to get the micro PET kit from The Future Was 8-Bit, because apparently they'll fit in these cases with a 3D printed, you know, holder. But hopefully I can get this thing to work, get the 3 key attached. So, don't even know if it works. We're going to find out. I have a Commodore 64, which, according to the serial number, is kind of a... It's not even a million. It's a 500,000 one, which means I think it's somewhere towards the middle of its lifespan, because they think it's a little over 1 million. It's missing the screws, but I don't think anybody's been in here, because it still has the RF shield, which is I'm going to toss. So, the camera is not picking this up, and it's bugging me. There's a piece of tape right here, but it is brown. It's not tan, it is brown. I don't know if it's my camera correcting for it or not, but I'm gonna go get the power supply for this so I can test it. Which this C64 uses the exact same. They use the same power supply. Luckily, the later VIC-20s and the C64s use the same 7-pin, 5-pin, whatever it was, power supply. So I can use one power supply for both of these, which is, yeah, I hesitate to even do that because I've heard rumors of them having pretty high failure rates. The other thing I'm going to restore is the 1541 disk drive. I don't know if it works. It is a little bit brown. So this thing's going to be torn apart. I'm going to retrobrite it. I'm going to lube up all the internal mechanisms. I need to clean out inside the grate because there's some gunk right there. But, so that is going to be this long-running or somewhat multi-part series, is restoring these these 4 devices, getting them working, and this one is just going to be me getting it cleaned up. So this one's not going to take that long at all, so I'll tear that apart later. So let's get these 2 powered up and just see if they do anything. But again, since I have a working VIC, I'm not going to be too heartbroken if it doesn't work. Now I do need to say something really, really fast about power supplies when it comes to these old Commodores. This is the Commodore power supply. It's a little bit older one. The newer ones kind of had a embossed, stamped Commodore logo. The problem with these power supplies is they are known for failing at a very, very high rate. And it's kind of random as to how they'll fail. But one of the most common ones is because these power bricks will both produce, they'll take the 120 wall power here in the US and drop it down to 9 volt AC and 5 volt DC. Now, what fails is often the 9 volt system will fail, And this will send just uncontrolled, unregulated power into the system, shorting it out. Now, ideally, that's not what's going to happen here, because I just got done volt testing this, and it is putting out 9 volt AC. It's like 9.1 volt AC and 5.2 volt DC. So this is fine within parameters. So, power on, see what happens. Okay. Okay, so it's not fully working. So one thing I want to test real quick is a game. So the reason why I want to test this is because if the ROM is bad, this will bypass the basic ROM that's in here and just go straight to the game. If it plays the game, it kind of will lead me down a path of where I might be able to diagnose this thing. And nothing. Okay, so we're going to unplug that. Okay, so VIC-20 is retrobrighted, needs torn apart and diagnosed, and no really garbled. I don't even think it has a video output. I think it's just garbled garbage. And now we're going to try the Commodore 64. Plug in the power supply, plug in my AV cable here, and hey, I have a working Commodore. Oops. Okay, the space bar's a little sticky, but oops. Okay. So we have a working, well, kind of working. The video's working. Let's make sure sound's working with the only Commodore 64 game I have. I'm getting just static. Okay, but I have a working Commodore 64. Okay, let's start with the Commodore 64, and it's missing a screw, so I'll have to go find some from my hardware store, or steal some from the whichever one of these, if that VIC-20 doesn't work. Okay, pull back the RF shield, which I'm pretty sure I'm not going to use after today. Okay. And then this is garbage. Okay, so it's actually not too dirty. It is a little yellowed right here. So I might try and just retro-bright the whole thing. Yeah, let's take a look at the main board. So I've never actually torn apart a Commodore 64 before, so this is all kind of new to me. We have, I believe, all of the... I'm going to do a lot of research, but C64A. Let's see. All these date codes are, because I know that some of these date codes matter to people. 82, 83, 83. I don't see a date code on these two. 83, 83. Most of the date codes seem to be 82 or 83. But yeah, everything's very nice on this. All right, and we have... Gonna need to put some more thermal paste on that, but... That's the CPU. That's a different style CPU. I'm not used to seeing them ceramic with gold contacts on these style. 6567 R56A from 83. Okay. So we have, I know these are all the RAM chips. I believe kernel ROMs, basic ROMs. I'm going to do a lot more research once I get into the actual reassembly of this thing. We have the RF modulator here. I just want to look at the circuitry on it. Yeah, everything looks good on it. It's very clean, which is very good. I'm very happy about that. Okay. So we're going to set this motherboard aside and start taking the keyboard apart, which I believe comes out from just these screws here. All right, one very dusty keyboard. Looks like it's going to need a lot of scrubbing cleaning. All right, one disassembled Commodore 64. Let's get all these parts organized and stuff. All right. So now I'm going to get the other two torn apart to this point, and we'll end the first video. This thing's a lot dirtier on the inside. And just because I know some people care about serial numbers, this is 1,275,658. Not sure where that lies in the grand scheme of things, but never know. And here's the later revision board. It's very dusty and dirty. So I haven't really diagnosed this thing at all, but I'm going to kind of assume it's either the CPU or this kernel ROM. In fact, something I might do real quick is I might take my good one, if it's interchangeable, I don't know if it is or not, and at some point when I do the diagnosing, swap them around and just see. But let's look at some date codes. 82, 82, 83 on this one. 83 and 83. So this thing is about the same year as the Commodore 64 just tore apart, which is very fascinating. Oh yeah, that one's even dirtier than the Commodore 64 one. But luckily, they use the same keyboard mechanisms, and I believe they're interchangeable. So, if anything, I have a spare board. I am going to have to do something to fix this number 3 key stock. Not so sure what I'm going to do about that yet, but all right. Okay, and this one's not getting a full teardown because it works just fine and it's in amazing shape. But I am going to tear it apart to kind of at least show the differences between the two VIC-20 revisions. This one is serial number 646,139. So about a third of what the last one was. Okay. All right, so as you can see, a huge difference in the motherboard designs. As you can see, huge amount of difference. This one is shorter. It's got a lot more consolidated chips on it, a lot more consolidated RAM chips. I believe they use the same. Yeah, okay, this is interesting. This also has date codes from 82, 82. So 82, but these are all from 82, 83. So I believe that this board was I know this board is a later revision, but just the differences here. The LED connector location is way different. The fuse location. This here is a giant heatsink because, okay, to kind of explain this real quick. these Commodore power bricks are known for failing on the 9-volt line. With the reason why these are kind of considered a little more reliable than the later revision that uses the C64 style power supply is because the power brick for this only puts out 9 volt. And then it's up to all this to rectify it down to 5 volt DC. So this area does get really hot. Because when I was using this, it actually has working vents right there. This thing does get extremely hot and warm right here. But it also means the power supply is a lot more reliable, and thus these are more reliable. Whereas these later ones will suffer the same fate as the Commodore 64s, because these will short out internally or fail internally somehow. I don't know exactly what causes them to fail, but they'll just overvolt the 9-volt line and completely fry every chip on here. Like now. Which is why I was testing this constantly before I plugged it in. I'm going to build a power supply. That's going to be the final part of this video series. Is I'm going to build a DIY power supply for the Commodore 64 and the later revision of VIC-20 that I have, if I can get this thing to work, which I don't know if I will. So, yeah, get this one put back together, and I'll tear apart the 1541. These have a very fascinating little story with them being the slowest disk drive of all time. Yeah, the camera's just not picking it up, but there is a slight browning all over this thing. Set that aside. Actually, this thing's really clean on the inside. It might actually just work. Yeah, everything looks really clean in this one. That's a little sticky, but yeah, it is just so astonishing. These things basically have their own. It's basically a computer right here. And yes, that was a pun intended. There's a resistor soldered right here, and some sort of capacitor soldered here on this chip. I'm seeing flux and patch jobs. All the date codes are 83, except the 6502B is from 82. Kind of an interesting game I want to review here very soon. And I need this and the 64 to work. Okay. Okay, yeah, you can see it kind of right here. There's a line of brown. So the casing's getting retrobreaded, but hopefully it works just fine. Clean the mechanism and get it all lubed up and ready to go. And there we go, the end of part 1. This video was mainly just about getting a symptom list going for this Commodore repair series. Shockingly, the Commodore 64 works on the visual level. I was actually not expecting it to work because with screws missing, I was expecting it to have, you know, to be one of those somebody tried to repair it, couldn't, and just tossed it. But it's very surprising, and hopefully everything does function. I didn't check to see if the SID chip worked. I probably should. So I need to get this floppy drive cleaned, lubed, and at least mechanically working with a serial cable. That's one thing I couldn't do today was test the speed. I wanted to, but I think it never came with one, or it came with the wrong style. Because there's like 80 billion different types of DIN connectors. So I can put some sort of game or software on the C64, make sure it boots from the floppy, and just test the SID chip out, because if the SID chip is dead, that's going to be a pretty expensive and hard to find repair for it. The other VIC that seems to be dead, I don't know what it could be. It could be the VIC chip could be dead, it could be the CPU, could be one of the kernel ROMs, bad RAM. I've never diagnosed a Commodore before. The T99 and the Apple II was about as in-depth of the diagnosing as I've gone into so far. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what's going on with that. So that's getting retrobrighted. The C64 is getting retrobrighted. The 1541 is getting retrobrighted. The data set, I have two of these. They're two different styles. This one's actually a little more beat up, but these are actually incredibly reliable because of the way that Commodore made them or designed them. So I have no doubt that this still works. I'm just going to tear it apart and get it cleaned up and scrubbed. Maybe retrobright, I don't know. But this VIC-20 I'm not going to do much with. I've looked up some videos online and some images online, and it's actually, the color's not too far off. It's just dirty. So I'm going to tear it apart and just clean it. Clean the keys, clean underneath the keys, get the dust out. And that kind of stuff. So since this one works 100%, I'm not too worried about the other VIC-20 working or not, but I am going to at least try to diagnose it. This one is going to be torn apart though, besides just cleaning, is I want to set this VIC-20 up on my test bench and swap chips, and just the chips that are compatible anyway, and just see what I could lead to. I think there's like 3 or 4 chips that should be swappable, so there's that. That's going to be part 2 or part 3. I don't know how many parts it's going to be. Right now this is the end of part 1, which was just getting some symptoms, getting a game plan going, which so far is just diagnosing a VIC-20 and retrobrighting some stuff. So look for part 2, which is going to be the disassembly of all 3 keyboard mechanisms and keeping the keys and springs separate from one another. Scrubbing all the cases and getting retrobrighting prepped for the C64 case, 1541, and the VIC. If that other VIC-20 is dead, my plan is down the road to get one of the Future was 8-bit micro pet kits. But that's long down the road because they're I don't want to say pricey because it's a hobby in itself, but for this being such a small hobby channel, me getting one of those kits right now is just not feasible. I'd like to at some point. That way I would have a hardware pet and not a pet emulator, which is what I usually mess with pet stuff with. So that might be what that case is for if the board ends up being dead. But if I can get it to work, then I'll have 2 working VICs, a newer one and an older one. So part 2 is going to be, again, the retro writing and tearing the keyboards apart. As for this power supply, oh, and part 2 is also going to be me getting the serial cable for this and testing it out. I'm going to be very careful with this original power supply because these can spontaneously fail. This one is working right now, but I don't know how much longer it could work. It could fail tomorrow. It could fail during part 2. It could fail all the way up to the tail end of part whatever series is going to be. Hopefully it lasts a while. So one of these videos is actually going to be me building a modern power supply for one of these, which is actually apparently pretty easy. Didn't think it would be that possible to build a power supply, but apparently off-the-shelf parts and you can do it, which is great. So with that being said, this video part 1 is done. If you liked it, hit the like button. Comment down below if you have any thoughts on me retrowriting these parts, or if you have if you've restored one and have any advice or tips. If you have any advice of where I can go to with that VIC-20 in terms of diagnosing, because again, I've never diagnosed it. You know, where would be a good place to start with trying to get it working. If you have know of any good software that I could easily get a hold of to fully test out the SID chip and the VIC-2 chip on the C64, because that's the one I really, really hope works. And then hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content like this, because part 2 is going to be coming out hopefully in the next few weeks if the weather cooperates, so I can retrowrite. Because the 1-year mark of my channel is going to be here in like a week and a half, which is just astonishing to me. I originally did not think I was going to last a year, because most of my hobbies I don't keep up with for a year, but this has actually turned out to be a pretty fun hobby. So with that being said, again, thank you for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in part 2. Thanks for watching.